Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here, your source for gaming tech, emulation, and open source news, and sometimes reviews. In this video, we're taking a look at the ASUS ROG Xbox Ally X and determining whether or not it can be used as an everyday PC. Let's get started. Alright, to kick things off, if you've been a part of this channel for a while, you're probably very well aware I like to experiment with different devices and kind of see what works and what doesn't. Testing them out is half the fun. I've done previous videos taking a look at different devices as to whether or not they can be used as an everyday PC. I've taken a look at the Pi Zero 2W, which I wouldn't really recommend, the Raspberry Pi 4, and also most recently the Steam Deck, and wow, my beard was not near as white as it is now, and that was just like 3 years ago. Now additionally, I do a lot of traveling with Mrs. Sujano, who is a travel vlogger. Well, we're both kind of travel vloggers in that regard. And I need a device that I take with me just so I can record, edit, and upload while I'm on the road. More often than not, I'm using something like an Android phone. Sometimes I'm using a mini PC just with a portable monitor, keyboard, and mouse. Sometimes I'm using an Alienware X14. And more often than not, I'm using a Steam Deck. Now, some of you may have caught that I've said more often than not on two different devices, my smartphone and a Steam Deck, and that's because more often than not, I'm using one of these two devices. On the road, I find the Steam Deck super convenient with a very good battery life for video editing and also very convenient for gaming. You'd think that the gaming laptop would be my prime choice for taking with me on the road, and the answer is not really. It's heavy, the fans are obnoxiously loud on it, and the battery life is brutal. I need to basically keep this thing plugged in. I mean, if I'm video editing, I'm lucky to get 30 minutes on that battery because I'm pushing it. Now, to be honest with you, if I could, I'd use the Steam Deck for basically everything. The Steam Deck's biggest shortfall is its Windows experience. Again, if you follow this channel, you probably know I'm a huge fan of Linux. I use Linux on the daily. I recommend stuff like Pop! OS and Cashy OS and Bazite, and well, there's a bunch of Linux distros that I recommend. Mint, I could just keep listing them. However, when it comes to testing out emulators and certain software, sometimes Windows is the only platform it's available on, and dual booting the Steam Deck with Windows is not necessarily the best experience. So earlier on this year, when I was at an ASUS event and got my hands on the ROG Xbox Ally X, I realized everything it was capable of and thought it may be a very good all-in-one device. The best of all the worlds, Linux and Windows and portability and usability. And when I pitched my idea of using this as an everyday PC to ASUS, they were completely on board. So over the last couple of weeks, the ASUS ROG Xbox Ally X as well as their Bulwark dock have been powering this YouTube channel. I'm using the dock with the device. And I've been using this thing as my regular PC for the last couple of weeks. I haven't even booted up my laptop. Now, if you're looking for benchmarks and comparisons for the ROG Xbox Ally X, I do recommend checking out the Fox's video here titled Xbox Handheld Review, Xbox Ally X. He goes over a ton of stuff in a ton of detail. For reviews of the Xbox Ally X as a handheld device, I'd recommend checking out this video here from TechDweeb titled Is This Really an Xbox? And this video here from Joey's Retro Handhelds titled ROG Xbox Ally X, This Wins by Default. I met both of them at the ASUS event. Furthermore here, to compare the gaming handheld versus a laptop, I would recommend this video from Crimson Tech. I don't know Crimson Tech personally, but the video I think is very well done. It's titled Gaming Handheld versus Gaming Laptop 2025, Xbox Ally X versus the ASUS ROG Zephyrus G14. So as for specs here, the Xbox Ally X boasts the AMD Ryzen Z2 Extreme processor, which I think is extremely capable. On top of that, it's got a 7-inch display at 1920 by 1080, 16 by 9. As an everyday PC, it's a little bit small. You might want an external monitor. On top of that here, it does have 24 gigs of memory. I would have preferred 32, but 24 is still extremely usable. By default, 8 gigs of this is dedicated towards the GPU, so you've got about 16 gigs to use for everyday stuff. And for the storage on this, which you can replace or upgrade, it comes with 1 terabyte. As for the ports, which I think are super important if you're looking at using this as a desktop PC, it's got a 3.5mm combo audio jack, which I find very convenient. It does have a micro SD card slot, so if you didn't want to open this thing up to try to upgrade the storage, you don't have to. You can just use micro SD. That's what I would do. There's also 2 USB-C ports. One is a 3.2 Gen 2 Type-C that supports DisplayPort and power delivery. The other one supports USB 4, Thunderbolt 4 compliance, DisplayPort 1.4 with FreeSync support, and power delivery 3.0. This is one extra port than the Steam Deck has, and if you're using this as a PC, that can come in handy. And realistically, I would recommend pairing this with a dock just to give you some more ports, for example, USB Type-A and also HDMI and all of that stuff. And that's where I think it's really nice that all of the ports on this are just not blocked up by that dock. It does have that extra USB-C port if you need it. Now the triggers on this one are Hall effect, but interestingly, the joysticks are not. And I do think that is a big miss on this device. I wish the joysticks were Hall effect so you wouldn't really have to worry about them. For audio, the Xbox Ally X does have a built-in microphone, which I think is actually pretty good for what it is. It also has speakers, which I think are phenomenal for what they are. For network and communication, it does have Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, which is absolutely no surprise. I'd say it's table stakes for a device like this. Plus, if you are using it as an everyday PC, you probably have Bluetooth devices you want to pair to it. And interestingly as well, on the top of the device on the power button is a fingerprint sensor. So if you didn't want to use a PIN or a password to lock your screen and wanted to use a fingerprint instead, you absolutely can, which is sometimes very convenient and quick. Now, I do have my Xbox Ally X docked, and I would recommend it if you were looking at using this as an everyday PC. And I'm currently using the ROG Bulwark DG300 7-in-1 dock. I do like this dock quite a bit, but it's not the only dock that's available. I mean, you can use a bunch of different USB-C docks with it. I've used this one from Ugreen, which is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think 5-in-1, 6-in-1 dock. I've also used the Steam Deck dock as well, and both of them have worked phenomenally well. The Steam Deck dock is a little bit awkward to use with it, but you absolutely can. So here's the quick and dirty about the dock, the good and bad about it. I'll say I like the dock overall. I like the RGBs. I like that they're customizable. I think the dock build quality is pretty good. I like the ports on the back. I like this dock overall. What I don't like about it is the front of it. For example, on the Steam Deck dock here, there is a lip where the Steam Deck sits right in, or a mobile phone sits right in, and you don't have to worry about it sliding out. On this Bulwark dock, there's not really a lip. There's a bit of a gummy layer, and that's really about it, and the device can slide out of there. So if you're expecting any kind of bumps to your device, it may fall out of the dock, and that's happened more than once with my Xbox Ally X, even just from moving it on my desk or bumping it accidentally with a keyboard or really anything like that. It doesn't happen a lot, but I have to be careful when I am moving it. Overall, I'd say it's an expressive, high-quality dock that is officially supported by ASUS, especially for the Xbox Ally X. It is a good option overall, but there are other options out there. It's not the be-all, end-all for docks. They do classify this as a 7-in-1 dock, but I would classify it as a 5-in-1. The two USB-C ports are taken up by one for power delivery and two for connecting to your device. So you're really left with 3 USB Type-A's, your Ethernet jack, and an HDMI out. For comparison here, I'd say the Steam Deck dock is a 6-in-1. I mean, you've got 3 USB Type-A's, you've got your Ethernet jack, power delivery, and I don't count that. And then 2 video outs. You've got your HDMI and DisplayPort. And for even more comparison, here's that Ugreen USB-C dock I was talking about before. They call this one a 6-in-1, but I call it a 5-in-1. One of the USB Type-C ports here is for power delivery. So without that, you've got 2 USB Type-A's. You have 2 USB Type-C's on this one at 10 gigabytes a second each. And you've got an HDMI out. So realistically, choose a dock that suits your needs. Now, in terms of processing power, I am currently using the Xbox Ally X to record this video, and let's take a look at Task Manager to see how everything's doing. Right now, I'm running this in performance mode at 17 watts. I don't even have this cranked up to 35 watts, which is the max performance. I'm using 10% CPU. Well, it's bouncing between 10 and like 30, give or take. 88% of the memory, and that is worth pointing out here. So taking a look at my processes, and well, you can see the CPU bouncing around. I've had it up for quite a bit of time. My memory, I'm using 13.8 out of 15.6 gigs. Now, I mean, I do have a number of things up. I mean, I'm using Discord here that's using a whole ton. Firefox, I've got a ton of tabs open right now. Google Chrome, I've got a bunch of tabs open as well. I wouldn't necessarily say I'm a power user, but I'm not a light user when it comes to a lot of stuff, especially not when I'm recording videos. I've got a lot of stuff open. And you can see here it all eats away at the memory. So that's where you can see that right now I've only got 15.6, basically 16 gigs available for me, and the other 8 gigs is dedicated to that GPU. I could reduce that if I wanted to, but I don't want to. I don't want to affect GPU performance. I could turn that down to, I guess, 4 gigs and give myself just a little bit more wiggle room. I would argue that 32 gigs on this device would be in a really nice sweet spot. But 24 at the same time here, I mean, that gives a nice bump to the GPU and still at least gives you 16. For reference, the Steam Deck has 16 gigs. So the Xbox Ally X does have that extra 8 gigs available to it. I mean, the Steam Deck has to do everything with just 16. However, the big difference there is the Steam Deck is running Linux versus Windows on the Ally X. And taking a look, this was my screenshot from when I was using the Steam Deck as my everyday PC, when I still use it. Anyways here, the CPU is one of the things that I use the most of, not the memory. Part of that is Linux, and part of that is just the way the Steam Deck does things. But I heavily use that CPU when I'm recording and really taxing the system. I'm not easy on it. So for those who are curious, here's my current home PC setup. It's nothing overly glorious, nothing overly complex. It's all about function. I'm all about function over form. Anyways here, just taking a look, this is the Xbox Ally X sitting on that Bulwark dock. I do have some stuff plugged into it, like an external display, a webcam, microphone, USB mouse, and keyboard. I mean, it's not that much different from my portable setup, which you can see here, where I'm using pretty much very similar stuff, except the absence of that external monitor, which I sometimes bring with me. Check out this YouTube short for more information. Also, if you are curious, here's the difference between the Steam Deck dock and that ROG Bulwark. You can see a huge size difference. And it's also worth noting here, although the Xbox Ally X does work with the Steam Deck dock, it really doesn't fit in the Steam Deck dock all that well. It's a little bit too wide for the base. Now, as a handheld device, I'd say the Xbox Ally X is one of the most comfortable handhelds I have ever used. Keyword one. I still think the Steam Deck is a far more comfortable handheld. I think the Xbox Ally X is far more comfortable than the Ally X. I think the weight distribution is better. I think it's overall far more comfortable. But there is one thing I'm not the biggest fan of, and that's on the back there where your fingers touch the bottom. At least mine did. I mean, I've talked about this one in previous videos. It's just my fingers always seem to find that groove where the handle meets the console. And also the screw holes. It's just, I'm not the biggest fan of how this thing is laid out in that regard. Other people don't seem to have the issue. It's just where my hands naturally seem to go is a bit of a pain with this thing. So let's get into what I liked, what I didn't like, and whether or not I'd recommend the ASUS ROG Xbox Ally X as an everyday PC. And we'll start out here with what I liked. First and foremost, I like the performance of this thing. That Z2 Extreme chip is no slouch. I liked how this performed at 17 watts. I liked how it performed at 35 watts when I was gaming and editing and recording. I also liked how this performed when it was in silent mode for light computing. Now, in terms of fan noise, this is one thing I love about the Xbox Ally X. It's one of the most, if not the most quiet device I have for recording, aside from using my frickin' phone. This thing is super quiet. It's quieter than my Steam Deck, especially when pushing it. It's way quieter than my laptop when I'm not even pushing my laptop. I think Crimson Tech does a really good job comparing the Xbox Ally X to the ROG Zephyrus G14, just to give you a good comparison on how those things sound together. And it's night and day. The Xbox Ally X is super quiet. When I'm recording with my laptop, some people have asked if I had a vacuum turned on. I have to have that thing so far away from the microphone because the fans are screaming on it. It's not a great experience whatsoever. I would not recommend the laptop just because of the fan noise. The Xbox Ally X, though, is super quiet. I mean, not to go on too much about this, but I've got the device sitting right now. I've got the Xbox Ally X sitting about 3 feet away from me, and I've got everything cranked on this thing. It's at 35 watts in turbo mode, and you can't really hear it on the mic. Maybe if you've got a really good set of headphones, but if you do, you're probably picking up echo in this room, and you can probably hear some other ambient noise. I mean, I am sitting near a furnace, and that kicks on sometimes. But anyways here, my Steam Deck, I've replaced the fan to get that quieter fan. And the Steam Deck is not loud at all, but that Xbox Ally X is so quiet. It is a pleasure to work with. I'm a huge fan of how quiet that device is. Now getting into my dislikes, and I do have a few of them. One, I dislike that they didn't go with 32 gigs of RAM and they went with 24. Using it as an everyday PC, I am pushing things quite a bit. And it would have been nice to have that extra RAM when I am using Windows, because I don't like using Windows all the time. And that brings me into point number 2 here. So for point number 2, it's Windows. And again, not a big fan of Windows, but at the same time, it is convenient to be able to get into it every now and then. However, the other day, this thing did an update, and after the update, I lost display out to the external monitor. The screen still worked on the Ally X, but I had no external display. At first, I thought it was a configuration issue, so I went in and tried to change things around, and it wouldn't pick up the display. Then I thought it might be the dock being defective. The USB devices work, just not display out. So I thought maybe that dock was defective. Tried a different dock, same thing. Then I checked my display. Display was fine. I tried 3 different docks. I tried 4 different docks with the Xbox Ally X. I've got a couple of other ones sitting around. Nothing was working for display out. I tried directly connecting to the monitor via USB-C. Did not work. I mean, I'm not going to lie here. I was almost at the point where I was thinking maybe, just maybe, there's something wrong with the Xbox Ally X itself. Maybe something's defective. The only thing that was stopping me from thinking that way was when I was restarting it, it would just go into Windows. It wouldn't go into Xbox game mode. I couldn't even access that anymore. And I couldn't figure out what was going on. Taking a look at Device Manager, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. However, the big however here, when I clicked on display adapters, this showed up. So for some reason here, for some freaking reason, the GPU was disabled. I had to right click on it and then click enable device. And that didn't fix the problem. I had to right click on it again and then click disable device. And then right click on it again and re-click on enable device, and that fixed it. So is that a fault of the Xbox Ally X? I would argue probably not. It's more of a fault of Windows. And even more so considering it's an Xbox branded Ally X. Microsoft has a hold of the software on this. You would think that Microsoft would probably do a better job here just getting all of this in order. I'm not blaming ASUS for that. I think that's a huge Xbox and Microsoft problem. I mean, I would argue the average person probably wouldn't troubleshoot like that and maybe think there's a serious issue with the device and maybe return it. I was at the point too where I was thinking maybe I'll just reinstall Windows or just accelerate me installing Linux on this thing and wiping Windows altogether. Anyways here, fortunately, I was able to fix it. The last thing I don't like are the grips. Now, some people love these, and I think this is more of just, it'll vary from person to person. I don't like the groove right there at the bottom. When I'm grabbing it, my fingers naturally gravitate towards that, and it's not necessarily the most comfortable gaming position. So before I get into my overall recommendation, we do have to take a look at the price. In Canada, it's priced at $1,300. In the States, it's a Qualcomm collected $1,000. And that is very expensive for a handheld. I mean, this puts it in the ultra premium category, in my opinion. So with all of that factored in, at $1,000, would I recommend the ASUS ROG Xbox Ally X as an everyday PC? And the answer is yes. Actually, yes, I would. With a star beside it. The big star being if you're looking for something Linux forward, something specific for Linux, I'd recommend just picking up a Steam Deck. I mean, it's designed for Linux. It's performing very well, and it's a lot cheaper. It's far more accessible for Linux and gaming and Linux PCing. I'd recommend the Steam Deck. It's an absolutely fine device. However, if you are looking for an all-in-one device, something that can do it all, this is it. Is it expensive? Absolutely yes. But if you're looking for a gaming laptop, you're also going to be spending quite a bit of money. If you're looking at a mini PC that doesn't have a screen with this kind of chipset, with an equivalent chipset, I don't think there's any mini PCs out there right now that have a Z2 Extreme. But if you're looking at something like with an HX370 in it, you're going to be paying quite a bit of money. As for the dock, the Bulwark dock, I would say you can live without it. You can probably find something cheaper if budget is your concern, but it does pair very nicely with this handheld. And I'll leave it at that for the dock. I'm not joking here when I say this. The ROG Xbox Ally X will be powering this YouTube channel moving forward when I'm home. When I'm home, the Xbox Ally X will be my setup. When I'm on the road, the Steam Deck is still going to be my setup. So these two devices here and my Android phone are going to be what's powering this YouTube channel moving forward. And I don't really see that changing anytime soon. The Xbox Ally X, in my opinion, is just that good. Now, if you are wondering why I'd say Steam Deck for the road and Xbox Ally X for home, the reason here is because I have both. I already have a Steam Deck. If I didn't have a Steam Deck, I wouldn't need to buy one because the Xbox Ally X can kind of do it all. However, I do have a Steam Deck, and if I were to lose one of them, I'd prefer to lose the Steam Deck. It's far cheaper to replace. I love the Steam Deck, absolutely love it, but I'd have no need for it if I didn't already have one. The Xbox Ally X can kind of do it all, and yes, it's also replacing my laptop. But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and the legendary one fluff. Huge shoutouts to ASUS for providing the ROG Xbox Ally X for a fair and honest review. Let me know your thoughts about everything we talked about in the comments below. If you liked this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button, check out my other videos. Don't tempt fate, save your state.